Okay, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this very important town hall event on domestic violence and sexual assault awareness, hosted by Lebanon Lutheran Church. We're excited to have you all here. As we begin, I encourage everyone to like or comment on this video. Your feedback helps us understand how much this topic resonates with our community and guides us in providing relevant information in the future. In the coming weeks, we will be posting a survey to gather your thoughts on which topics you would like to learn more about. Our goal is to empower our community with knowledge and resources needed to address these significant issues. Before we dive into our discussion, let's take a moment and reflect on a powerful verse for strength and resilience. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13. Let this verse remind us that we are not alone in our struggles, and together we can support one another. We're also thrilled to announce our new partnership with the City of Chicago Department of Aging. Together, we will work towards making the southeast side of Chicago a dementia-friendly community. In the coming weeks, I will be hosting information seminars for families navigating dementia. Stay tuned for more details. Now let's get started with our esteemed presenters, often Megan O'Shaughnessy from the 4th District Community Policing, Officer Perez, Officer Rosas, and April McFolson from Metropolitan Family Services. Muy buenas tardes. La presentación del día de hoy nada más será en inglés, pero tenemos a varios oficiales disponibles el día de hoy para contestar sus preguntas en español. Si tienen alguna pregunta, por favor, incluirla en los comentarios. Se estarán contestando estas preguntas antes de que termine la presentación. If you have any questions, please add them to the comment section, and we will be reviewing those questions and answering them at the end of the presentation. And now we pass the mic over to Officer O'Shaughnessy and and April McPolson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on. So I am the Domestic Violence Liaison Officer here in the 4th District, which is the southeast side of Chicago. So every district throughout Chicago has a Domestic Violence Liaison Officer, and my job is to go through the reports that are made from days, afternoons, midnights within the district, and identify the victims who've made these reports and reach out to them to try to get them in touch with resources they may need. We also go out into the community and do events. Again, just trying to raise awareness and trying to let people know how things work within the police department, the courts, resources available to them. And then we work hand in hand with a lot of different groups from the area, Metropolitan Family Rescue, things like that. So I will just start off by doing a little bit of information for not everybody knows what DV is, the types of abuse, the cycle of violence. So we'll go through some of that. So pretty much DV is a pattern of harmful behaviors used by one person to maintain power and control over another within the context of dating, family, or household relationships. So again, remembering the main thing with domestic violence is it's a power and control issue. There's many different types of abuse. Obviously, physical is one that's commonly known, but you can also have emotional, psychological, verbal, financial, economic, sexual abuse. And a few of those examples to kind of dive into verbal abuse would be, again, using words that are powerful, demeaning, criticizing, hurting, misdirecting, anger, manipulating. Emotional abuse would be undermining someone's self-worth, self-esteem, diminishing their abilities, name calling, putting down, gaslighting. Psychological abuse would be fear, intimidation, threatening harm to themselves, isolating a victim, destroying property, hurting pets. Economic abuse would be making a partner financially dependent, maintaining control over their financial resources, damaging their credit, withholding access to money, limiting attendance to school or work. Sexual abuse would be forcing sex after physical violence, engaging in non-consensual sexual behavior. And then obviously the physical abuse, hitting, slapping, pinching, shoving, grabbing, strangulation attempts, choking, depriving of sleep, driving recklessly, denial of medical care, forcing alcohol or drug use. And these types of abuse, again, not everything is necessarily criminal. You know, if you're being verbally abused, it doesn't always cross into where it's criminal behavior, but it is still domestic violence. You know, these are things to look out for because a lot of people tend to kind of be in denial of what's actually happening and what it actually is. And then a lot of people are not aware that domestic violence is what we call a cycle of violence. It has 3 different phases to it. So it's not always bad. There's phase 1 that they call a tension building phase. So it's usually when the abuser is getting argumentative, angry, yelling, criticizing. Minor fights may occur. You would feel like you're walking on eggshells. And then phase 2 is the explosion phase. This is usually when a major act of violence would occur. It can be physical, a sexual attack, or threats to harm, as well as verbal abuse. This is the phase that injury is most likely to occur or the police would be called to come out. And then phase 3, which we call the honeymoon period, is after the explosion, when the abuser feels sorry, they start acting apologetic, loving. They say things like, I'll never do it again. I'm sorry, I never meant to hurt you. I promise I'll change. Promise I'll get help. I only did it because I was drunk, high, lost my temper, etc. They'll sometimes shower the victim with gifts, and things do get better for a little while. But these 3 phases tend to repeat over time. Sometimes there's days, weeks, months between them. But that cycle will continue. And with that cycle of abuse, some of the things then talking about, even if someone themselves is not the victim of domestic violence, it is pretty common that most of us probably know someone who is going through it, but you don't always know the signs to look for. So some of the signs, if you notice them in a friend, a coworker, a loved one, look out for unexplained injuries, bruising, or other pains, wearing unseasonable clothing like long sleeves in the summer, appearing very withdrawn, not as social as they used to be, acting fearful around their partner, being quiet, letting their partner answer questions or speaking for them. Symptoms of depression or trauma include exhaustion, confusion, isolation, panic, and they blame themselves for their partner's anger or dissatisfaction. They minimize and try to deny arguing, fighting, or abuse within the household. They ignore their own mental, emotional, and physical and spiritual needs, frequent visits to the doctor or hospital for unexplained reasons, and missing work or social obligations more often than usual. And so then that leads us to a lot of people always ask the question, one of the biggest things that I get asked, not everybody really understands the dynamic of domestic violence, and they wonder, why don't they just leave? So leaving is not easy at all. On average, it will take a victim 7 times to leave before they actually will stay away for good. Exiting the relationship is the most unsafe time for a victim. As the abuser senses that they're losing power, they will often act in dangerous ways to attempt to regain control over that victim. And most victims, they have a lot of obstacles. It could be one or it could be many reasons why they choose to stay and not leave. And that can be they're believing the threats, their children's best interest, pressure, cultural and race issues, denial, they're disabled, they're elderly, emotional attachment, family pressures, fear of retaliation, fear of losing child custody, financial despair, guilt, homelessness, isolation, keeping the family together, low self-esteem, medical problems. There's obviously a ton of reasons. Those are just some of them. So ways that if you notice and recognize and think someone's going through this, the best ways that you can help are first and foremost listening to them. You may be the first person your friend, your coworker, your loved one has told about the abuse. So validating their feelings, letting them know you believe them, that you're sorry this happened to them, and that you're here to listen and support them. You want to create a safe space, let them know you are a safe person to talk to, and let them know that you want them to feel comfortable and do not press for details. Thank them for trusting you. And finally, sharing resources. Connect them to resources that can help, but let them decide whom to contact. If they want to contact anyone and when to do it. Taking the first or the second or the third step to get help is hard, and it can often put victims of abuse at a greater risk. So that's the biggest thing I always tell people. I'm like, you got to remember, as much as it's hard to be on the outside and watch someone going through it, you can't, force them into what you think is best. You really have to respect their decision and support them through it and let them know all the things that are available to them and that you're there for them and supporting them. But ultimately, it is going to be their decision. They're going to leave when they're ready to, and it is best for them to, meet with resources and come up with safety planning so that, again, they can be as safe as possible, because that will be a dangerous time when they want to leave. And then before I turn it over to April, I'll just go through some of the resources that we do have. Aside from myself, which you can always reach out to the 4th District Station within our CAPS office. And our number is 312-747-1708. You can ask for the domestic violence officer and you'll get me. And I can always direct you to any of these resources. But we have the Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline. You can call or text them. They're 24 hours, 877-863-6338. The Chicago Rape Crisis Hotline is 888-293-2080. The Cook County Human Trafficking Hotline, 877-606-3158. And the two main resources I work with directly, Family Rescue, which is actually located inside of our 5th District Station. Their phone number is 872-702-4397. And they do 24-hour crisis intervention. They do emergency shelter and housing, counseling sessions, legal advocacy and referrals, children's services, safety planning, and then Metropolitan Family Services, located here on the southeast side. Number is 773-371-3642. And they offer clinical services, counseling, group counseling, legal advocates, supervised visitation and safe exchanges. And I always recommend, when I'm working with victims, the court system can be very tough to navigate. Orders of protections are kind of complicated, a lot of paperwork. So I always recommend utilizing these free services if you're a victim of domestic violence. It's either a phone call to one of them to set up having a free legal advocate, or even if you go to the courthouse at 555 West Harrison, they will have one there that can help you out, walk you through all the paperwork, accompany you to court. So it makes that process a little bit easier if you are trying to get help getting out of that. But all of these resources are also available to people, even if you don't want to go a legal route. You're not trying to get an order of protection, lock someone out. If you just want to talk to somebody, you still, have access to these, even without utilizing the police department. And then April, if you want to go on anything that I missed. And oh, I can't hear you. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Hello, everyone. My name is April McPherson. I'm a DV advocate at Metropolitan Family Services, but I also have experience in sexual assault as well. So I'll start by, I believe that DV and sexual assault is, hand in hand. So when comparing sexual assault and domestic violence, I think it's important to recognize that they are similar in some ways, but also different in how they show up. Both are rooted in power and control, and both can have seriously emotional and psychological and even physical effect on survivors. They are also both unreported because of fear, stigma, and not always feeling supported. And that's where advocates like me come in, and Megan and things of that sort. In my opinion, the main difference is the context, which sexual assault is centered around non-consensual sexual acts and can happen between anyone, whether it's a stranger, or acquaintance, or a partner. And it can also be a one-time incident or repeated. Domestic violence, on the other hand, is usually a pattern of behavior with ongoing relationships where one person uses different forms of abuse like physical, emotional, financial to maintain control over the other. I also think it's important to point out they can overlap. Sexual assault can be within domestic violence situation, which makes it even complex for survivors. On an average, 24 people per minute are victims of rape, physical violence, stalking, or intimate partners in the U.S. alone, accounting for more than 12 million cases a year. 3 out of 10 and 3 out of 10 women and 1 out of 10 men has reported a related impact. Having related impact of those situations as far as sexual assault or rape. So it does affect not just that individual, it affects the family, it affects the community, it affects the workplace. It's a domino effect. So it is important. I was not sure if we were going to ask questions, and I would say the ask room, but I did want to point out those little key points.
Okay. And so the way that me and April work together, obviously, I'm in community policing. We work police hand in hand with the community. And so without advocates like her, it would be tough to do it. I'm not a clinician. I'm just kind of the middleman in between, where I have access, obviously, to police files and know who are victims in need. But again, confidentiality is really important, and respecting victims' wishes. So I just, try to get the information out there, letting them know, what is available within this area, from Metropolitan and other places. Like I said, because counseling, just sometimes needing to talk to somebody and be heard and have your feelings validated, having that safety planning done, is important. Again, the legal advocacy is one, I would say, April, I don't know if you agree, but that's probably one of the biggest ones a lot of victims utilize, because like I said, it is really confusing within the court system. And us as police officers, we kind of have a disconnect from the court system. So we don't really have the opportunity to be able to see where things go after. So whether an arrest is made or just a police report, we show up on scene if the offender's not there. Once that police report is generated, if that victim goes to the court and gets an order of protection, if there is an ongoing court situation, we really don't have access to that within the police department. So that's why I always tell people, I'm like, it's really good to have somebody within then the court system that they can ask those questions to, have going with them to court, help them fill out the paperwork. Because again, people don't realize with orders of protection, no order of protection, no two are the same. Within an order of protection, there's 18 different remedies. What these remedies are, they're just different things where sometimes you're limiting that offender from like coming to your workplace, or saying he can come home, but he can't be drunk. Or, and some of them can't come around at all. There's different protected people, maybe can't come around my family as well, or the kids or the family pet. So the judge will decide what remedy. So every single order of protection is kind of tailored to that specific need for that victim. And there's different types of orders of protection. There's emergency ones. So that's where only the petitioner, the victim, has to be present. The judge is going to grant that to you for about 14 or 21 days. And you can renew it, you know, but pretty much that's just that initial one. And the judge is kind of looking for, is going to want, you know, kind of some evidence if he's going to put a full one in place. So again, I always will tell victims, even if you haven't made police reports, really important having, you know, some pictures, text, videos, anything you have, important to show to, you know, the state's attorneys and everything. And then the other orders of protection, we have an interim order. Both parties would be present for that, and that would last 30 days. And a plenary order, which both parties would be present and would last up to 2 years. So again, that process is nice when you have someone there helping and explaining it to you. But that's pretty much like, you want to add something to that?
Yeah. Actually, a lot of the courtrooms do have DV advocates located. You probably would just have to ask, even if it's not Metropolitan. It could be, like you said, family rescues, but most DV courthouses does have an advocate there that will support the victim if they needed help. If not, you can reach out to an organization and let them know that you are a victim and you would like those type of services. So, yeah.
Yes. And both Family Rescue and Metropolitan Family both offer English, Spanish, and I think you guys also, it says Polish too as well. So even if you do need another language, I do know that they have DV advocates down there that do speak Spanish. But I always tell people, you know, again, it's going to look different for every victim in terms of what they're going to want to do. Our job is, again, just supporting a victim, not telling you what you need to do, and just listening to you and supporting you in what you want to do. But I do, obviously, you know, the police department does recommend and hope, if you find yourself in a dangerous situation, calling the police, getting that, you know, police report made, recommending going and getting that order of protection. But, you know, also keeping in mind that, unfortunately, sometimes an offender doesn't always abide by the order of protection, and it can be common that they are still going to violate that order of protection. You know, it is an immediate arrest, no questions asked, automatic arrest if they violate that judge's order and don't follow those remedies. But we always still tell victims, you know, you still have to do some level of other safety, you know, that that might be changing a phone number, trying to move away, you know, staying with family, you know, just trying to get out of that situation as best you can. So I think that's pretty much
having a safety plan is a really good one. The safety plan, with the safety plan, you have, it lets you know everything. If you had in your paperwork, keep a copy of your birth certificate, your social security cards, you know, all of your important information, have it or leave it somewhere where, you know, you can get to it, or just having a safe word for your neighbors or your children. Or I think a safety plan is very beneficial for anyone dealing with domestic violence and things of that sort as well.
I think that's kind of covered everything. Are there any questions?
Yes, I have a few questions. So how can churches and faith communities better support our survivors?
I would say, I mean, aside from obviously the prayers for victims, I would say, again, just having the information there available to them. If you do have anybody in your congregation that is a clinician and has, you know, maybe group counseling. But the main thing, like I said, is really support for victims, because the hardest thing is that, I mean, no two victims, the same thing doesn't work, you know, for one victim as for another, because maybe someone doesn't have a job, maybe they have kids, leaving is very difficult sometimes, you know, to pick up and change your entire life. So I think things like that too, if you're able to offer, sometimes if they're leaving, they may need clothing, they may need food, they may need a safe place to stay for a short time. The shelters, unfortunately, are sometimes full. Some of them only allow women. And if you have a teenage son, they might not admit you there. Or some people won't leave because they have a pet and a shelter's not going to let them bring a pet. So I think, if somebody were willing to take in and help somebody within the congregation, let them stay by them or offering them things. I mean, that's probably one of the best ways, is just supporting any of those types of needs, and trying to leave.
And now, how can we reduce stigma around talking about domestic violence and sexual assault?
I would say, just the information going out there, just realizing just how common that it really is. Unfortunately, even within men, women, every single race, it really does not, unfortunately, discriminate, and it's so common. It's actually, unfortunately, pretty much one of the leaders of violence within the city of Chicago. People think it's gangs and it's carjackings. It's not. It's domestic violence, and so some people, yes, it's embarrassing sometimes for people to admit, because it makes you feel weak. I was actually a victim of domestic violence when I was 19, and it's extremely hard to come out and say that, especially to your family. And then people, you don't want people to look at you and think, well, why are you staying? Like, are you, because that's the best thing you could do, is just make people feel validated and make them realize, like, it is not your fault. You didn't do anything to deserve this. There's nothing you could have done differently. It doesn't make you weak or dumb. It can truly happen to anyone.
Yes.
I believe that bringing awareness is just one of the key things, and to bringing people out, the more people know that, we exist and that there are resources and there are support, the more that they might want to come around and, agree to the help. Because a lot of people don't know, as far as like with my DV situation, I didn't know places existed. So I handle things on my own, versus now that's why I do a lot of outreaching, to let people know that these services does exist. So just the outreach, just the awareness, I think does a lot.
And knowing that they're not alone, because chances are, if you're talking, you reach out to one of these resources, it's somebody that they're doing this job because it's close to their heart. And most people within this job, either themselves or know someone close to them that have, went through it. So, it makes it a little bit easier.
Yes. And now, do you have any recommendations on how we can create safer spaces for the youth and the teens to talk about their relationships? If they're in a relationship where it started off where, the kids are dating, very nice, and then all of a sudden, the boy or even the girl starts to get controlling. And so how can we create that safe space for our youth?
So we do go into predominantly the high schools. We don't really, parents don't always want us talking to younger kids. We do realize kids outside of high school are still dating, but we tend to stick to high schools. But February was actually just Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. We're at CVS High School. And again, every year, we go into high schools and we try to bring awareness into a lot of the kids. They are very receptive to what we're saying. They ask a lot of questions that are like, really? The biggest thing with kids is they are truly in denial of what abuse is, because people just like go right to someone hitting them, and they don't really realize the correlation. Like, it's all about power and control. So like, one of the big things I tell kids, there should be no reason why you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend that is tracking you on Snapchat. You shouldn't be sharing your location. We do a lot of just the red flags for kids, where, in explaining to them just how bad it can get. And it's easier to leave when you're still young and you're at home with your parents, versus you move out and now you're living with this person and have kids together, and now you're really dependent and reliant on them. It's so much harder to get out. So trying to get them the red flags in their head, that a lot of them had no idea. So, that's the hope, is that as they continue to move on, that'll remind them in their head, like, oh yeah, this isn't healthy. That, you know, because a lot of kids, it really hasn't reached a level of, you know, violence, but there is a lot of red flags with that control. So trying to make them aware of that. So hopefully that, you know, they just never even have to live through it. We definitely do that outreach.
Right. Now, what are practical ways to intervene safely when you suspect abuse, as neighbors, as friends, extended family?
So obviously the one way, which a lot of people tend to do that we deal with is, you know, you see it going on at your neighbor's house. You absolutely can call the police. But again, I remind people because when I used to work the streets, I had this happen to me on a few different occasions. If you call us on your neighbor, I go over there and knock. Unfortunately, two things are possibly going to happen. One, that offender is mad because the police just showed up. And that offender is most likely going to blame the victim, thinking that the victim called the police. So sometimes it can actually create a bit of a more violent situation. Some victims they'll come in and make a report on their own time. They don't want the offender to know that they're talking to the police. So you absolutely, especially if things are getting violent, you can always call the police and we'll go there. But I also think it's really good to try to speak with that victim one-on-one on the side, you know, letting them know you're there for them. If you become a safe space for them, most people, we all know when you're going through something, you want to talk to somebody, you don't want to hold it in. But if you identify and make them feel comfortable talking to you, again, just trying to persuade and, you know, them that they can do it, that, you know, you'll help them getting those resources. If they come in, they call me, again, I can refer them around to people, even without a police report being made, you know, because sometimes that's the thing. They don't want that offender to know because they're going to get punished worse if that offender thinks they're trying to, you know, escape. So I just tell people, I'm like, realize, and if I go knock on that door and that victim doesn't want to answer or says everything's fine, leave. I mean, I can't, they have the right to that. They're the victim of the crime, not the neighbor. So I have to respect them. So it's a tough thing. You can call the police. I recommend it if something seems really violent where it's like life or death. But sometimes I think talking to that victim in private one-on-one is very helpful.
Okay.
Or
And
maybe even coming up with a code word, or if it's an emergency, something like that. Just something as simple as that. If you hear this,
Yeah, like
or
text me if you need
like
me
I
to.
said, a discreet conversation with the victim when she's not around anyone, where she's probably at her most comfortable space. And just
now, what are the emotional and psychological impacts of domestic violence that people often overlook?
I would say one of the biggest ones probably is with children. People don't realize just how bad the effects are on a child. I think us as adults are more resilient to overcoming, but unfortunately, we see the pattern that most of these children that grow up and become victims and offenders came from houses where there was domestic violence that either they witnessed or was happening to them. So I think the biggest thing is recognizing it's really dangerous to have that child witnessing and living through that trauma, because that's, you know, that's hard to overcome. They're not as, you know, it's not as easy as us as adults. So that's my biggest thing, is just really trying to avoid and break the cycle so that kids that grow up in that trauma don't end up becoming victims and offenders of it.
Right. And for the workspace and the schools, how, well, I guess in a job, I don't know, is it recommended, like if you are struggling and you have nobody to speak with, speak to your HR department, perhaps to get some counseling, or do you have
Yeah,
any recommendations around that?
I
we
mean, some
also,
people.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead, right?
Okay. So we also have the Violence Against Women's Act, which is every workplace with a certain amount of employees have to go by, which is an act for individuals facing domestic violence. It equals to time, unpaid time off, things of that sort. If you got to move, it's a lot of laws behind. You get emergency moves, you get time off work. There are a lot of things out there for individuals facing domestic violence, which I don't think people know exist as well. So a job has to give you time off if you're a victim of DV and you're going through things.
And if you're trying, and even like I know a lot of people, if you have a lease, and
you're trying to get out of your lease, you can break your lease with that law. So yeah, it's the Violence Against Women's Act.
And a lot of people might be maybe scared to tell their boss,
employer, or
they don't want to be fired. They're embarrassed, but they can't, retaliate against you or punish you for being the victim of something. You are protected in that. And honestly, I've really never heard anybody. Most workspaces are very receptive to that, and they will. A lot of women have told me, they let their boss know. They make sure someone walks them out to their car. They make sure they know what this offender looks like to make sure they don't come, to their workspace. So I know things can be scary to put out in the open, but I really haven't heard any victims having like a negative impact from their workplace. Most jobs do not want to put you in a dangerous situation, so they're going to do what they can.
Great information. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Rick, do you have any questions?
No, I would definitely just recommend, like I said, it's, in case you forget my name or anything, you can always call it. And if you don't live in the 4th district, whatever district you live in, if you look it up online, every district has an Office of Community Policing. We all have domestic officers. So we kind of had that network of all these different, places that we work with throughout the city. So can kind of get you whatever you need. Metropolitan Family Services, Family Rescue, some of the few. And then if you look up even online, the Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline, they have a lot of resources. They have tons of links of anything. If you need food, help with housing, pet food, clothes, toiletries, they give you a long list of what's around you, on a map if you need that. And again, I think churches are great spaces where I feel like almost every church, if you came forward, I'm sure they would absolutely help, out with those needs. So I think that's the best we can do is just, keep supporting and helping each other out.
And calling 311 will connect them with the Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline as well. So if they don't have a number on hand, they could call 311 and they can get connected as well.
That's a great point. Yeah, if you need food services or something.
All types of services through 311. I'm sorry.
Yes, and now I took down most of the numbers that you gave and I created a list. So I will be posting those numbers in the comment section of today's recording. We will also make them available. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to the church. We can provide you with that information as well.
Yes. If anybody needs anything, I'm always available. So feel free to reach out.
Margarita, I do have a question. I know we really didn't get into the sexual abuse that deeply, but is it my understanding that a lot of like the symptoms or what you see out of domestic violence survivors and victims is kind of the same, especially when with kids and young adults, the withdrawn, the dropping grades, maybe all of a sudden a drug issue. Am I correct that a lot of times the symptoms kind of seem the same? And for our parents and our close family members, it's a good idea to keep an eye out for those for our kids because they don't know how to deal with it. So it's kind of on us as adults, and we should know our kids well enough that when we suspect something going on, to take that little deeper dive into it and look for it.
If you would like, I can give some signs and symptoms if you all don't mind
Yes.
as far as in
Yes, please.
children. So nightmares, bedwetting, I'm sorry, excessive, inappropriate sexual knowledge or behavior, sudden onset of aggressive behavior, large weight change, become overly protective of siblings, withdrawal or disinterest in normal, enjoyable activities, poor concentration, regressive behavior, anxiety, guilt, depression, sudden fear of certain places and people, unexplained frequent health complaints, stomach aches, headaches, don't feel well, and resisting physical contact, just to name a few. So there are signs.
And I don't know if it's still true, but is it my understanding that family members tend to be a large portion of the people who abuse children?
Yeah, I would say
It's a
usually
high
the
rate of people knowing who they normally know who that person are. As far, especially with children and teens. Yeah, it's usually someone that they know, someone that they trust, someone that, yeah.
I feel like trauma is so similar within domestic violence and within sexual assault. They do overlap a lot. And so I feel like, yes, any of those symptoms, like you said, you would know your child best to definitely start looking into it if you recognize them exhibiting
And
those.
for older teens, they might self-harm, run away, start getting trouble at school, or abusing drugs and alcohol, things of that sort for the more upper age children.
Is
You
there
will see
any,
a change in them as well.
is there any like adult behavior that we can kind of look out for that might give us a clue that someone is maybe
Over friendly,
okay.
take interest in one child over the next, or just give one child too much attention when there's several children, giving them gifts and things of that sort, just like
Things that
just
just
real
don't seem right.
overbearing. Yeah.
Okay.
Or what we notice a lot too, I feel like when someone when a parent has a boyfriend or girlfriend, someone that isn't that child's parent, you know, and especially when it's early on in the relationship and you're leaving, you know, your new boyfriend to watch your children while you're at work. That's one of the big ones, unfortunately, that we see.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Does Offer Perez want to share something in Spanish really quick?
I don't know. I'm not really good at translating, but Officer Rosas will probably do a better job
Just
of translating anything.
Oh, okay.
If you have a question, I don't know.
Maybe just like quickly, if you can just let people know or share some information as far as that there is resources out there for people. There are phone numbers that we will be providing to them that they can contact in case of any situation.
Sí, vas a tener números de teléfono para hablar si hay si hay un cosa que quieres hablar de doméstica violencia. Sorry, I'm not really good at Spanish, so yes, van a poner los números ahí en el chat.
Thank you. I think it's always better, information is always received better when it comes from the source. I mean, we can provide information, but, we thank you for being here, of course, because it's always great to have the information from people that can actually, they can call, anybody can call and ask for assistance. We appreciate you.
Okay. And if they do call, like I said, Family Rescue Metropolitan, they do go to 555 West Harrison to domestic work. all of these places do provide Spanish speaking advocates as well. So that's helpful too. They wouldn't have to worry about that translation automatically.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Okay. If we don't have, I'm looking at the, we don't have any questions in the comments, but we do have your phone number. And of course, as mentioned, we will be posting all the phone numbers in the comments section. And we thank you all for joining us today. Your presence and participation are vital in addressing the issue of domestic violence and sexual assault. We hope that this discussion has opened your eyes to the resources and support available in our community. Remember, everybody, you're not alone. And if you are someone that you know is in need of assistance, please reach out for help. Okay, as we move forward, we encourage everyone to engage with us through the survey that we will be posting soon. Your input will help us in continuing to empower our community with information that matters. We look forward to seeing you at our future seminars. We have the seminars that are focusing on dementia care, and together we can create a more informed and supportive community. As we close, let's hold on to the message from Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. May this inspire us to keep pushing forward, supporting one another in our journeys. And we thank you once again for being here. Thank you, Officer O'Shaughnessy. Thank you. Thank you to April McPholson, Officer Perez, Officer Rosas, and we look forward to seeing you again next time at the next event. Thank you.
No
Thank you
problem.
for
Thank
having
you.
me. Have a
Thank
good
you all
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.